Hello, on this video I'm going to show you how to update a database from a Visual Studio Model View Controller project. Now this video is part of a series of videos, so if you want to watch the other videos, I'll leave a link on the description of this video. So this is where I left off from the previous video. So I'm going to run this program just to see where we are. So I have a page, I'm going to enter some data. Click on submit, then it goes to a page 2 and loads the information. And this information already went to the database. And then I put a link right here to edit the animal. So I edit, and then I can type some new values. But when I click on submit, nothing happens because the action is not ready yet. So let's work on the action for that. All right, so here I have I just noticed there's a misspelling here, so I want to put the P for update the animal. And because I'm changing the action, I also need to go to the page 3. So I want to fix this misspelling word right here. Otherwise, this is not going to work. All right, so now let's work on this action now. So this action gets the ID from the session. And then the next thing is to create a object type zoo, and now let's create a update animal so we can update the database. First, I want to define the returning value. I'm going to put a boolean is updated, and that's because I want this to return true or false if the update was successful or not. Then I'm going to use the zoo object, then update the animal, and I'm gonna pass the animal model together with the ID. So the animal contains the data that's coming from the view, and then the ID is the primary key that I got from the session that I previously put in the session whenever I did the insert. All right, so now I'm calling this function. This function does not exist on the zoo class, so because of that it gives me this red squiggly. So I'm going to hover over, show potential fix, then click on generate the method. After that, right click and then go to definition, and this is the function that Visual Studio created for me. So I'm going to write my code here, and the code to update is very similar to the code of insert. So I'm going to copy the entire insert function content, and I'm gonna paste right here on the update animal, and now I can start updating this code to fit my needs. So the connect to the database never changes, so exactly the same code. The query is gonna change slightly, so let's work on the query. So for the query, I'm gonna open the SSMS, and I'm gonna get the query from SSMS. So I'm gonna go to my database, to the table, I'm gonna right click, and then script table as updates to new query editor. So this is the update query, and the update is updates the table and then set column value, column value, column value, and then there's a where clause here, so you do not update the entire database. So I'm gonna make something stupid right here, and that's exactly what you want to avoid. So first I'm going to select everything from the database just to see what we have. As you can see, we have a variety of data. So let's update row 13. And on row 13, I'm just going to set the name to be Max, the type to be a dog, and then finally the food to be banana. And the very important thing here is the clause. The clause is the where clause, and the condition for the where is when you put the ID equals a number. So in my case it's number 13, because 13 is the row that I want to update. So I'm going to run this query here, and when I run this query, it says one row affected. That's a very important thing here. One row affected. And then after that, I'm going to run the select. And if you look at line 13, the dog name got changed. So now if I run this again, the update alone, even though it did not have any change because the name was only Max and the type was only dog and the food was only banana, even though there was no actual change, but this query will set the values again. So even though the values are the same, even though there is no net change on the database, you still have one row affected. All right, so now if I select everything from animals again, I get all the data. Now, the where clause here is very, very, very important, because if you ignore this, if you run this code without the where clause, what happens is that you affect the entire database. So now I have 38 rows affected. And now if I select everything for the database, then guess what? Everything is Max, everything is dog, and everything is banana. So forgetting to use the where ID equals something here is going to be a major disaster for your database. So pretty much here, this database is garbage by now because everything has the same data and all the other data is lost and lost forever. Now, on a production database, they do have backups, but it's a very, very rookie mistake to forget the where clause here. All right, so I'm going to copy this query and I'm going to take that to Visual Studio. All right, so now instead of this query, I'm going to paste the query that I brought from the database. Now there is a character return a new line here. I'm going to delete these guys and I'm going to press enter. And when I do that, Visual Studio breaks the line for me. So I much rather have a shorter line. So I'm going to have 3 lines, 4, and then finally the where clause is the last one. All right, so now I need to change this to insert my parameters. And the first parameter is going to be, well, at name. The second parameter at type. The next parameter is at food. And then finally the last one is at ID. And then after that, I need to set the parameters. So I already have some of the parameters set. So I'm going to use the animal model that I'm passing to this function as a parameter. So animal name, then animal type, animal food, and then the last parameter is the ID, and the ID happens to be just ID, which is what I passed as parameter right here on the function. It seems like Visual Studio does not like the ID here because it has a red squiggly. However, it seems to be correct, but I think it's because of this line of code, right? So I'm gonna comment it out so we can move on now. All right, so this is good now. So the next one is execute the query, and I'm gonna execute non-query for this time. So I'm going to erase this and I'm going to uncomment this. Now, the execute non-query function queries the database for you and then returns the number of affected rows. So I'm going to create a integer here, and it's going to be a count equals execute non-query. So my expectation is that if everything went right, if you set up the ID correctly, and if this query updated just one row in the database, so the expectation will be the count equals 1. So I'm going to do a if here. If count equals 1, that means this was successful. So I'm going to return true. Now, if the count is anything less than 1, now we have a problem. Now, it can be either 0, meaning the ID does not exist on the database, which is a problem, or it affected multiple rows in the database, which is also a problem. So I'm going to put here else return false. Now, in reality here, we would not just return false. We would log this and send an alarm or do something or raise a flag somewhere because this is really bad. That means something is wrong with the database. All right, so, and I need to close the connection, so I'm going to move this right after I execute the query. And that's going to be step 4. And now I do not have to return anything more because the return is going to happen right here. All right, so this function now should be completed. So I'm going to zoom out here a little bit and let you see the entire function, just in case if you're coding together with me and try to follow it. All right, so now I'm going to go to the home controller. Now, at this point, I have a stop right here in line 67. I want to run the debugger because I want to see what happened to the isUpdated boolean. I want to see if this is returning the correct data or not. So I'm going to press F5 to run the debugger. I'm going to enter some data. Press submit. Now I'm going to edit the animal. Click on submit, and then it stops right here for me. And now I go right here on isUpdated, and then I see that set to true. Therefore, I know this worked. That means he updated one single row in the database. Now, another thing, if you're paranoid, you can get the animal from the database. You don't have to, because if this operation was successful, then whatever you have on this model should be exactly the same that you have on the database. But if you're paranoid or for whatever reason, you can at this point get the animal and then call the zoo class and call the get animal. We already have this function written anyway, so you will get the animal if you do that. The good thing about calling the get animal function is that no matter if this was successful or not, you will get whatever it's on the database. So this is another thing you can do here. I'm not gonna do this just to keep this very simple. So now I need to return a view, and I want to return the animal to the view. So I'm going to put the animal right there. Instead of creating a view to display the animal, I can just use the page 2, because if you look at the page 2, it has exactly what I want to do, which is send the information to the view and have the view display it. So at this point, instead of returning the update animal, or I'm going to return the page 2 view. And the reason I'm going to do that is because the page 2 is already doing what I want it to do. The page 2 receives the animal model and displays it. And also at this point, I do not have a update animal view. So I'm going to return a different view this time. So let's run this program and see what happens. So I have the page. I'm going to pass some information. Click on submit. It displays the data for me. Now remember, this is the page 2. Now I'm going to click on edit the animal. Now it goes to page 3 where I am doing the editing. I'm going to put a different name here. I'm going to put Max, and I'm going to click on submit. And now the name and the name of the animal changed. And I am back at page 2. But if you look at the URL, it says you are on the update animal. So even though it says you are on the update animal, you're actually on page 2. Now if I click on edit animal again, I can change the type of animal. Max is going to be a giraffe. click on submit. It shows me giraffe again. I can change the foods and do this again. Now I want to do one last change on the page 2. And the page 2 I have the edits the animal. But now I want to have another link that says delete the animal. And instead of going to page 3, I'm going to put delete animal. Now I do not have this action yet, so I'm going to create this action. I need to create a delete animal action, so I'm going to copy a different action, and then I'm going to paste right here at the bottom, and then get the name and delete the animal. Then I will need the ID, and I will need the objects, and this is obviously wrong, and this return is also wrong. So I'm gonna stop the video now because it's getting a little too long, but on the next video I'm gonna write the code to delete the row from the database. Alright, so that's all for this video. Thanks for watching.